Mark Richt's first recruiting class at Miami is in the books. We bring in Cam Underwood from State of the U to help us break it down. And Clemson and Florida State out in front of the ACC, and Miami was the only other school that was able to hang in regards to pulling in some of the top recruits across the country. Cam, you're at 19 according to ESPN in the final rankings, 21 according to 24/7 Sports, and 24 according to Rivals. Are you happy with the class, regardless of what the rankings have to say? And can you kind of review some of those late commits that came in and maybe some of those guys that you lost?
Yeah, no problem. I'm okay with the class. Obviously, you would want to have a few more of the top end players that we were chasing to come in, but with only 3 weeks really to recruit, that was going to be a tough haul. So getting a full class or close to it is a big thing, and keeping a lot of the guys who were in that class in the commit group there was a big thing. We had 5 early enrollees. All of them are 4-star rated players. Quarterback Jack Allison, defensive end Patrick Bethel, whose father played at Miami and was a 2-time national champion, and 3 linebackers, Shaq Quarterman, who led the U.S. Army All-American game with 6 tackles, and Zach McLeod, who went to the same high school as Vince Wilfork and is said to be the best player to come out of Santa Lucia's high school since Vince Wilfork, and then Michael Pinckney from Jacksonville, who I call a 4-star player. If you watch that film, he's a 4-star player. I have no idea why on the rating services he's only ranked at 3, but all 5 of those guys got in early, and they took their visit on January 15th. So keeping those guys in was a big thing. Going towards the end, Sam Bruce, an electric wide receiver out of Fort Lauderdale, St. Thomas Aquinas, was said to be wavering on his commitment. He had been committed to Miami since last July, and there was thoughts that he would flip somewhere else, like his friend Jordan Scarlett did last cycle, flipping to Florida at the last minute. But he reaffirmed his commitment and came to Miami. There's some chatter that he was trying to flip to Ohio State, but they said they didn't have room for him. I don't necessarily believe that. But he, in the event, he ended up in the class. Deontay Mullins is a 4-star kid from Gulliver Prep, outstanding wide receiver. If you watch that Under Armour All-American game, he had the one-handed catch over 2 defenders, which was pretty awesome. He's been on ESPN for catches in middle school and high school, and in the Under Armour All-American game. So he's been on ESPN a bunch. People call him down here Mr. ESPN because he's always making highlight plays. He's in the class. He stayed in the class. Is another top talent who could have went elsewhere. Let me see. Who else is Zach McLeod, actually. He had decommitted after Al Golden got fired after the Clemson debacle. And then he came back into this class. He said Miami was home and was family. That's where he always wanted to go, but he was unsure about the situation. So, getting him, keeping those guys in this group, Joseph Jackson out of Gulliver Prep, who played with Deontay Mullins, is the best player in this class that nobody's talking about. He's 6'5", 237 pounds, played everywhere on the field for Gulliver Prep, but he's going to play a defensive end for Miami. He has the potential to be a first-round draft pick. And he's just way under the radar. He's kind of just been a quiet recruitment. So, we did have some really good star power that came into this class. And that's pretty good. Out of our 19 commits, 10 of them are 4-star or better, which is a very good ratio that you want to have. And it's more than classes that were rated higher. For example, University of Florida, their class was rated higher than ours, but they only had about 6 or 7 4-star players. We had more than them, just with a smaller commit group, so we didn't get the points on the recruiting scale that they did. But, I think that there's a solid level of talent on this team or in this class. There's a couple of points you made right there, Cam, that I really like. And one is that you talk about the number of 4-stars versus the number of total commits. And if you look at the ACC rankings, you see that Clemson, Florida State, and Miami are the only ones that are anywhere close to that ratio. Then it drops a ton, even though Duke's class was strong and a very strong David Cutcliffe class at like 28 to 30 in the country. The number of 4-stars compared to the number of total commits, not even close. You make another good point that people don't typically hit on, and that's they're always looking for who did you steal, who did you flip, but you look at who did you protect. And I know that the Bethel signing seemed to come right after Rick accepted the job. That seemed to be tied closely to one another.
And then if you get this wide receiver here, Mr. ESPN, if he's able to maintain that nickname, Cam, for the next 3 or 4 years, then you really have something there, if that's able to stay true. But so you're not buying. I'm seeing in the recruiting rankings where the class tumbled 5 or 6 spots on the last day, so you're not necessarily buying that.
Not really. We closed on a few guys towards the end. Giovanni Haskins is a tight end out of New Jersey. He played quarterback for his high school team because he's the biggest, baddest athlete on their squad. 6'4", 235 pounds. But he's going to play tight end, kind of in that same kind of flex or seam role as the David Njoku is doing right now for us. So in the future, I think that he's going to be a very good player for us. We got Romeo Finley, a 4-star safety out of Niceville, Florida. That's way up in the Panhandle. That's the real name of the city, by the way, Niceville. And it's way up in the Panhandle. It's like East Alabama. Almost. It's actually in the central time zone. That's how far up and over it is. But he's a lifelong Hurricanes fan, took his visit the last week, and he committed to Miami also. And then on National Signing Day, the prize of our class, the guy that I wrote was the ultimate pickup, the best guy in this class, is 4-star receiver Amon Richards from Wellington High School. He's a kid who, like Zach McLeod, was committed to this class for a while, decommitted after the Clemson game, and had a very heavy recruitment after he decommitted. Alabama was charging hard. Auburn was charging hard. Tennessee was trying to get him to visit, but he was never going to go there. But SEC teams all around the country, Florida tried to get him in for a visit or was communicating with them. That didn't actually come to fruition, but supremely talented guy, 128 catches for 2,600 yards and 33 touchdowns the last 2 years of high school. I want to say it's in his commitment piece on our site, but just outstanding. 6 foot, 270 pounds, a little thin, but he's going to come in. All 3 of these receivers, Deontay Mullins, Sam Bruce, and Amon Richards, they're playing from day one. They're already, in my mind, on the 2 deep above guys who have been there. And we only have 5 guys who are returning at the wide receiver position to begin with. So plenty of playing time for them. And we did close on some of those guys. We got an offensive lineman late, a 6'8", 285 kid named Trey Johnson out of Orlando. We got a defensive tackle late. Tyreek Martin is his name, spelled really weirdly, Tyreic, Tyreek. But he's from Alabama. He was committed to Missouri when Coach Kulagowski, our outstanding defensive line coach, was there. Kulagowski comes over, he flips and everything, and people look at him like a 3-star, but he was a kid who Kulagowski wanted, and he's the best defensive lineman in America in my mind. And Will Muschamp wanted him for his defense in South Carolina. So I know that the ranking says 3 stars, but when you have 2 of the top defensive minds in America chasing after you, that's high praise for me. So we did close on some of those guys. We did hit every position group. We kept a Travis Homer, a 4-star running back who's, he can fly. He's a 4.4 or 5 kind of guy. We hit every position group. We didn't necessarily hammer all of the groups that we needed to. And that's not to say we didn't lose guys, which I think might be your next question. But there were some guys that we lost around the end, and that did slide us a little bit. But overall, I'm still pleased with the class.
Well, let's talk about that. The guys that you lost at the end, your thoughts about that and what might have been the deciding factor.
Yeah, that's fair. First, we have to talk about cornerback Tyler Bird from Naples, a longtime commit, one of the best players in the class. He was the guy who had the blocked extra point and return and interception and forced fumble and 5 tackles in the U.S. Army All-American game. So did a little bit of everything and did it really well. He flipped to Tennessee. Our old tight ends coach and interim coach, Larry Scott, was his lead recruiter, Birds, that is, when he worked for Miami. Now he's the tight ends coach at Tennessee, kept that contact, and Bird's teammate, Carlin Filzame, is a running back who was going to Tennessee. And Bird and Filzame have lived together since 8th grade. So they're not just friends and teammates, they're basically like brothers. And so Tyler Bird took his visit here on the 22nd of January. He said it was like an 8 out of 10, really good. I'm solid in my commitment. Goes to Tennessee on the 29th, the last weekend, to visit before National Signing Day. Calls it a 10 out of 10, a 12 out of 10. Amazing time, great, this, that, and the third. So I had hoped, or I wrote before that visit weekend, that he was going to stick. But when that whole visit went down, you saw the reaction and conversation. It was pretty much writing on the wall. So he flipped to Tennessee. Also, Latrell Williams, he's a 3-star, really a 4-star receiver. He played at a a little city, Lake City, Columbia High School. So it's like north of Orlando, north of Gainesville, in like the middle of nowhere. Nobody really goes there to recruit or anything. So he's very under the radar, but he's a kid who has like 4.25 speed. 80 or 66 catches for 1,200 yards and 14 touchdowns as a senior. And if you just watch his highlights, he popped off the film just right away. And he also flipped to Tennessee on National Signing Day, which was, I mean, he kind of had said on Twitter, like, I don't know where people are getting these reports that I'm thinking about not going to Miami. Like, who are you talking to? And then one of the reporters who used to work down here, Jordan Kroger is his name. He lives up in Lake City now. And Jordan just tweeted it like at the signing day ceremony. He's like, oh, Latrell Williams signs with Tennessee. Okay. And we're just like, well, yeah, that's why, because in the recruiting, like, you talk to people and things, get out. So those two guys, those were kind of, the Bird one was bigger than the Williams one, even though we have playing time at wide receiver and speed can play anywhere. So even if he was a 2-star recruit, because people didn't have eyes on him, if he lived in South Florida where I live, if he played at a Booker T Central, or sorry, a Booker T or a Miami Central or St. Thomas Aquinas or Hallandale or Miramar or Coconut Creek or any of those places, that's a 4-star kid. Because of his speed, and if you look at the playmaking ability, so there was that. Some of the other guys we were connected to, but not real, kind of just taking a puncher's chance. There was a 4-star defensive tackle, Kobe Jones from Starkville, Mississippi, which is the city where Mississippi State is. So he decided to stay home. A couple other guys, Javon Wims is a JUCO wide receiver who's committed to Georgia. Thought he might come back down here. He's originally from Miami Carroll City High School, so he's a South Florida native. He's stuck with his commitment to Georgia. Randricus Davis, the kid, I don't know if you've seen this, but he has a huge Georgia G tattoo on his bicep, right. And I talked about him coming down to Miami, but he decided to instead go to South Carolina to play offense for Will Muschamp, which is a decision that I find dubious at best, but hey, if you want to go play offense for Will Muschamp, then more power to you. And there were a couple other guys that we kind of were taking shots at, but didn't actually make, and that would have really elevated the class a little bit higher. That would have been a home run with keeping the guys in the class, adding these other guys. And we did miss some. And like I said, having Bird and Williams flip to Tennessee, I think the Bird flip, that was the one that really mattered. But, all in all, we basically kept everybody in the boat. We added a few 4-stars, have a positive 4-star ratio for this class. So I know it's not necessarily the #1 class in America, top 5 that Canes fans want, but this was a really solid job by the staff. They did a really good job to close. We're just going to take that and move forward, hopefully win some games and spin that momentum into 2017 recruiting.
Yeah, there are programs all over the place, Michigan State, Oregon, TCU, that rank in the 20s and 30s every year and play in elite bowl games and do very well in their conferences and compete nationally. So that's not a huge deal. Cam, I got to say before I let you go that I'm intrigued by college football across the nation, but there's a few programs that really interest me. UCLA for one, for other reasons. Miami's another one. And this is why. It's because you get the best talent in the division. Now you've got a proven coach, and you should win that division. And starting this season, and certainly a couple years from now. So I'm going to be intrigued to see where this program goes with the coach that you have in place, combined with the resources in the recruiting base.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like you're talking about with some of those other teams that are ranked a little bit lower than Miami, but play to an elite level. And the component that was missing is the player development, that coaching, and in game day implementation of those players who you have developed. Those are things that have been missing here for many, many years. And I'm excited to see that also because, if you look back to the 2012 recruiting class, that was Tracy Howard as the #1 cornerback in America as a 5-star kid. He didn't play to that in college. He didn't. He didn't really develop, and our coaching was substandard across many areas. And I'm not just going to call out Tracy Howard. There were like 18 guys in that class out of 27 who didn't really play meaningful snaps, and that's a 4-year class. That should be the foundation of this team going forward. So we didn't have that. I hope. And I expect that we will turn that around. Mark Richt said that he's gotten some of the right guys in. Like I said, Craig Kuligowski, best D lineman coach in America. Thomas Brown, who's the offensive coordinator and running backs coach, he coached at Wisconsin, Melvin Gordon's senior year, and then he coached at Georgia last year. So his running backs do very well. You bring in a Manny Diaz, who is a Miami native, to run a 4-3. And, he talked about it being undersized a little bit. But if you talk about undersized, you're talking about basically not Alabama size. That's oversized, where you can just kind of do whatever you want because you have that physicality. This coaching staff knows what Miami is. They have a clear definition. They have a clear idea. And that's something we've been missing, trying to remold South Florida talent, trying to change the native being of these players. These guys are coming in. They're hungry to do well. I mean, Thomas Brown is offensive coordinator at 29 years old. John Richt, Mark's son, is quarterbacks coach at 25. You have Mark Richt, who's rejuvenated because he stagnated at Georgia. You have all these guys who want to come in here, and they're going to coach. They're going to develop these players. So it's my sincere hope and goal, like you say, that this year right now, we're challenging and winning the ACC Coastal, and we spin that forward, and we continue to get back to what Miami football should be.
Cam Underwood, not just with the big voice, but the big game and providing tons of analysis. Cam, it's always a learning experience for me to get you on here and break down the personnel. It's good stuff.
Yeah, man. Thanks. Always a good time. We'll see you guys later.